The afternoon sun warmed my kitchen, the scent of Earl Grey tea hanging in the air. The quiet hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, a welcome respite after a morning spent gardening. Then the phone rang, shattering the tranquility. It was my son, Derek. "Dad," he began, his voice unusually bright, "we're planning a family cruise. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could join us?" He painted a vivid picture of sun-drenched beaches, turquoise waters, and the exotic ports of call. Evelyn chimed in, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. "Imagine, Dad, all of us together, making memories. Eleanor would just love it." My granddaughter, Eleanor, was the apple of my eye, and the thought of seeing her face light up with joy tugged at my heartstrings. "It would be wonderful," I admitted, already anticipating the trip. "There's just one small thing," Derek continued, his tone shifting slightly. "The total cost is a bit more than we anticipated. We were hoping you could help us out with a little loan, just $8,000 to cover everyone's expenses." I paused, the tea suddenly turning bitter in my mouth. $8,000, I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. "It's a significant amount, Derek." Evelyn jumped in again, her voice laced with a hint of desperation. "We know, Dad, but think of Eleanor. She'd be so disappointed if we couldn't all go together. It wouldn't be the same without you," I sigh, the image of Eleanor's smiling face flashing before my eyes. I had always tried to provide for my family, to ensure their happiness. "All right," I conceded, "I'll see what I can do." There was a chorus of excited thank yous from both Derek and Evelyn. They promised to send over the booking details and assured me it would be the best family vacation ever. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, the warmth of the sun no longer reaching me. $8,000 was a lot of money. It was a substantial portion of my savings. I had always been happy to help my son and his family, but a nagging feeling began to creep into my mind. I pulled out my old checkbook register, its pages filled with entries documenting years of loans and gifts to Derek and Evelyn. A wedding gift, help with a down payment on their house, emergency car repairs, unexpected medical bills. The list seemed endless. The numbers blurred before my eyes as I tallied up the amounts. It was far more than I had realized, a staggering sum that made my head spin. I had always trusted my son, believed that he would eventually get back on his feet and repay me. But looking at the cold, hard figures in my checkbook, a chilling realization dawned on me. I hadn't been helping them, I had been enabling them. They had grown accustomed to relying on me, taking my generosity for granted. The cruise, the elaborate descriptions of sun-drenched beaches and exotic ports, it all felt like a carefully crafted performance designed to extract more money from me. The thought of Eleanor missing out on the trip still bothered me, but a new resolve began to solidify within me. This had to stop. I had to protect myself and, perhaps, in a way, protect them from themselves. I poured myself another cup of tea, the warmth of the mug a small comfort against the growing coldness in my heart. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, once a symbol of peaceful solitude, now seemed to echo the emptiness in my wallet. The afternoon sun, which had initially filled my kitchen with light, now cast long shadows, hinting at the darkness that was beginning to settle over my relationship with my son. I picked up the phone again, a new sense of purpose hardening my voice. I needed to talk to Derek again, not about the cruise, but about something far more important. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my living room as the phone rang. It was Derek, my son. "Dad," he began, his voice a little too cheerful. "We were thinking about a family cruise this summer. Evelyn found a great deal, but it's a bit more than we budgeted for." He paused, then added, "It would be wonderful for Lily to go, to have the whole family together." I knew what that meant. It wasn't a request. It was a thinly veiled demand. "How much more?" I asked, already bracing myself. "Well, about 8,000 would cover it," he replied, the cheerfulness now edged with a touch of nervousness. $8,000. I swallowed hard. "Let me think about it, Derek," I managed, my voice tighter than I intended. "I'll call you back." I hung up the phone, the weight of his words settling heavily in my stomach. $8,000. It wasn't the amount itself, although it was a significant sum. It was the pattern, the constant need, the expectation that I would always be there to bail them out. My gaze drifted to the framed photo on the mantelpiece, a picture of Derek and Evelyn on their wedding day. They looked so happy, so full of promise. How had things come to this? I went to my desk, pulled out my checkbook register, and began to flip through the pages. There it was just a few months ago, $2,000 for car repairs. Before that, $1,500 for unexpected medical bills. And further back, a string of smaller amounts, always for some emergency or another. It added up. It added up to a lot more than I had realized. I ran my hand over the entries, a wave of nausea washing over me. I'd been so willing to help, so eager to support my son and his family. But now a chilling thought began to take root. Had I been a fool? Had they been taking advantage of me all along? The phone rang again, startling me. It was Derek again. "Dad, did you think about it?" he asked, his voice now laced with a hint of impatience. "Lily's really excited about the cruise. She keeps asking about it." Hearing my granddaughter's name, a pang of guilt shot through me. Lily. She was the innocent one in all of this. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to compose myself. "Derek," I said slowly, "how much have you borrowed from me over the past 2 years?" There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "What do you mean, Dad?" he finally stammered. "Just various things, helping us out, I mean," I repeated, my voice hardening. "How much money have you taken from me, with the promise to pay it back over the past 2 years?" Add it all up, the silence stretched on, punctuated only by the faint sound of Derek's breathing. I don't know off the top of my head," he mumbled. "Well, perhaps you should figure it out," I replied, a cold anger beginning to rise within me. "Call me back when you have an exact number." I hung up the phone again, my hands trembling slightly. The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My own son, using his daughter as a pawn to extract money from me. The cruise, the great deal Evelyn had found, it was all a charade. They needed money, and they knew I was their easiest target. The thought sickened me. I paced the length of the living room, my mind racing. What was I going to do? How could I confront them without hurting Lily? She was the only grandchild I had, the light of my life. The phone rang a third time. This time it was Evelyn. "Dad," she began, her voice sweet and apologetic. "Derek told me you were asking about the money we owe you." She paused, then continued, "We're so grateful for everything you've done for us. We really are. We just haven't been able to get back on our feet yet." "Evelyn," I interrupted, my voice flat. "How much is it?" Another long silence, then a hesitant reply. "It's close to $15,000. Dad, 15,000. More than I had even imagined." I closed my eyes, feeling a wave of dizziness wash over me. $15,000. And they had the audacity to ask for another 8,000 for a cruise. "Evelyn," I said, my voice trembling now, "I need to think about this. I'll call you back." I hung up, the phone clattering against the desk. $15,000. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation. They had used me, taken advantage of my love for my granddaughter, and treated me like a walking ATM. And for what? For a cruise, a fleeting moment of luxury, paid for with my hard-earned savings. I sat down heavily in my chair, staring out the window at the setting sun. The sky was ablaze with color, a vibrant tapestry of orange and red, but I couldn't appreciate its beauty. All I could feel was a deep, gnawing emptiness. The cruise, they wouldn't be going on that cruise. Not on my dime. I had a plan forming, a plan that would change everything. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my living room carpet, the same carpet I'd painstakingly chosen years ago, imagining family gatherings, holidays, the laughter of grandchildren. Now it felt like a stage for a play I didn't want to be in. Derek and Evelyn sat stiffly on the sofa, their faces etched with a mixture of expectation and something else, resentment. Maybe. I cleared my throat. "I've given this some thought," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm happy to cover Eleanor's cruise fare. It's important to me that she gets to experience this with her cousins." Evelyn's face brightened just for a second before Derek spoke. "And us? Dad, we can't exactly leave her alone on a cruise ship." He said it as if it were the most obvious thing in the world, as if my contribution should extend to their lavish vacation as well. My stomach tightened. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Derek." My voice was quieter than I intended. "I've already helped you out considerably this year. The new car, the unexpected vet bills." I trailed off, remembering the string of increasingly elaborate requests, each one chipping away at my savings, my peace of mind. Evelyn shifted uncomfortably. "Dad, we wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. It's a family cruise. It wouldn't be the same without all of us." The way she emphasized family felt like a subtle accusation, a reminder of my supposed obligations. "I understand," I said, forcing a smile, "but my finances are limited. I've already stretched myself thin." Derek leaned forward, his voice dropping to a low growl. "Limited? You're always telling us about your investments, about how well you're doing." He gestured around the room, taking in the comfortable, but by no means extravagant, furnishings. "This place isn't exactly a shack. Dad, you can afford it." The heat rose in my face. "That's not the point, Derek," I said, my voice rising slightly. "I've worked hard for everything I have. I've always been there for you and your family, but I can't keep bailing you out." Evelyn jumped in, her voice sharp. "Bailing us out? We're just asking for a little help, Dad, for a family vacation, something that would make Eleanor so happy." My granddaughter's name used like a weapon. It was a low blow, and it landed. I looked at their expectant faces, the tight smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. Something shifted inside me, a quiet resolve hardening in the pit of my stomach. "I've helped you with the down payment on your house," I said slowly, each word measured. "I covered your credit card debt last Christmas, and the car you said was essential for your growing family." I paused, letting the words hang in the air. Derek's face flushed crimson. "That was different," he stammered. "We needed those things. And what about the loan you took out for Theta investment opportunity?" I continued, watching his expression darken, the one that unfortunately didn't pan out. Evelyn looked away, her fingers twisting in her lap. "We were trying to improve our situation, Dad," Derek mumbled, avoiding my gaze, "to provide for our family. By relying on me, I finished for him." My voice flat. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, filled only with the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, a gift from my own father, a reminder of a different kind of family. "So Eleanor's ticket, that's it." Derek's voice was tight, barely controlled. I nodded. "I'm sorry, but that's all I can offer." He stood up abruptly, knocking over a small porcelain figurine I'd bought on a trip years ago, a memento of a simpler time. It shattered on the hardwood floor, the pieces scattering like broken promises. He didn't even glance at it. "Fine," he said, his voice laced with bitterness. "Fine. We'll figure it out." He turned and stalked out of the room, Evelyn trailing behind him, her face a mask of anger and disappointment. I stood there, amidst the shards of the broken figurine, the silence of the room pressing in on me. The shadows seemed to deepen, the afternoon sun losing its warmth. The cruise, the money, it was all a symptom of a deeper problem, a rot that had been slowly eating away at our relationship. I looked at the scattered pieces on the floor, a symbol of so much more than a broken trinket, and in that quiet, desolate moment, a plan began to form, a seed of resolve taking root in the barren landscape of my disappointment. I knew what I had to do. Rain lashed against the living room window, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. I'd barely had time to set down my tea when the doorbell rang. There they were, Derek and Evelyn, plastered with strained smiles. "Dad," Derek began, his voice unnaturally cheerful, "we were just in the neighborhood and thought we'd pop in." Evelyn chimed in, "We missed you." I gestured for them to sit, my heart heavy with the premonition this wasn't a social call. The air crackled with unspoken tension. We made small talk, the weather, Evelyn's new job, but the elephant in the room remained their request for the cruise money. Finally, Derek cleared his throat. "Dad, about that trip," he started, fiddling with his watch. "We've had a bit of a setback." My hand tightened around my teacup. "Setback," I echoed, my voice carefully neutral. Evelyn jumped in, wringing her hands. "We've accumulated some debt," she admitted, her gaze fixed on the floor. "How much of a setback are we talking about?" I asked, dreading the answer. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Well, it's around $50,000. The teacup rattled in my saucer. $50,000. The amount hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I stared at them, speechless. 50,000. I finally managed, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. Evelyn's eyes welled up. "We know it's a lot, Dad. We're so ashamed," Derek added. "We've tried everything. Dad, we don't know what else to do." He looked at me, that familiar pleading look he'd perfected since childhood. This wasn't about a cruise anymore. This was about their persistent financial irresponsibility, their reliance on me as their personal bank. I closed my eyes, images flashing through my mind, the down payment on their house, The endless loans for car repairs, the emergency funds for Julian's unexpected expenses. I thought about the worn checkbook in my desk drawer, a testament to their constant needs. How did this happen? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The story that unfolded was a familiar one. Unexpected medical bills, a failed business venture, credit card debt spiraling out of control. They painted themselves as victims of circumstance, caught in a web of misfortune. But I heard a different narrative, one of impulsive spending, poor financial planning, and a complete lack of accountability. As they spoke, I began reviewing the past few years in my mind. The numbers added up, the small loans here and there, the temporary setbacks, the constant request for just a little help. It wasn't just $50,000. It was a pattern of behavior, a cycle of dependent state carefully cultivated. I pulled out a notepad and a pen. "Let's break this down," I said, my voice regaining some of its strength. "Tell me exactly where this debt came from, every single penny." Reluctantly, they began to recount their expenses. As they talked, I meticulously noted down every amount, every explanation, every justification. The more they spoke, the clearer the picture became. This wasn't just bad luck. It was a deliberate strategy. They had been systematically draining my resources, using my generosity as a crutch. The rain outside intensified, the wind howling against the glass inside. The storm was just beginning. I looked at the figures on the notepad, a stark representation of their financial recklessness. I looked at Derek and Evelyn, their faces etched with a mixture of anxiety and expectation. And then a quiet resolve settled over me. This had to stop. I leaned back in my chair, the notepad resting on my lap. "I understand the situation," I said, my voice calm and measured. "It's certainly challenging." Derek's eyes lit up with a flicker of hope. "So you'll help us?" he asked, his voice eager. I met his gaze, my expression unreadable. "I need some time to think about this," I reply, my voice neutral. "I'll let you know what I decide." They exchanged a nervous glance, the unspoken question hanging in the air. They rose to leave, their departure strained as their arrival. As the door closed behind them, I picked up the notepad again. The numbers seemed to burn into the paper. $50,000. It was a significant sum, but it was also a turning point. I knew what I had to do. The rain continued to fall, washing away the last vestiges of my naivete. The crews, their debt, it was all a symptom of a deeper problem, and I, the enabler, was finally ready to find a cure. My gaze drifted towards a travel brochure lying on the coffee table, a picture of a sun-drenched beach beckoning me. Perhaps a solo trip was exactly what I needed. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my living room carpet. I sat there, stunned, the phone still warm in my hand. Evelyn's voice echoed in my ears, a sickly sweet plea for financial assistance. "Dad, we just need a little help to make Lily's dream come true. It's an amazing opportunity for her to see the world. $8,000. That's what they needed for a family cruise. A cruise they'd already booked, assuming I'd foot the bill. Think of it as an investment in Lily's future, Dad," Derek had chimed in. "She never forget this. They knew my weakness. My granddaughter, Lily. How could I refuse her anything? But something had shifted within me. Their words, once music to my ears, now gray like sandpaper. It wasn't just this request. It was a pattern, the down payment on their house, The unexpected car repairs, the business venture. It never quite took off. I'd been bailing them out for years. I reached for the worn leather-bound ledger I kept tucked away in the drawer. It wasn't just a record of my expenses. It was a chronicle of their dependence. Each entry, meticulously dated and detailed, told a story of their financial irresponsibility. The emergency roof repair that coincided with their lavish anniversary trip to Hawaii. The unexpected medical bill that appeared just after they'd bought a brand new SUV. The essential business loan that mysteriously vanished into thin air. The numbers blurred before my eyes, a dizzying spiral of debt masked as misfortune. They hadn't just asked for help. They'd orchestrated a campaign of subtle manipulation, using Lily as their pawn. They knew I couldn't say no to her. They'd counted on it. My hand trembled as I turned the pages, each entry a fresh wound. The sheer volume of it all, the audacity, hit me like a physical blow. They hadn't just asked for help. They'd expected it. They'd relied on my generosity, my love for Lily, to fund their lifestyle. They'd treated me not as a father, but as a bottomless ATM. A wave of nausea swept over me. How could my own son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd trusted, do this to me? And Evelyn, how could she stand there, so sweet and innocent, while her husband systematically drained my resources? I closed the ledger with a snap, the sound echoing the finality of my decision. This had to stop. I wouldn't be their safety net any longer. They needed to learn to face the consequences of their actions. Lily, sweet, innocent Lily, deserved better than this. She deserved parents who could provide for her, who wouldn't use her as a tool to manipulate their way out of financial trouble. I wouldn't let them continue the charade. I wouldn't let them poison my relationship with my granddaughter. I pulled out my checkbook, the familiar ritual of bitter irony now. I wouldn't deny Lily the cruise. She'd been looking forward to it, talking about it for weeks, but this would be different. This would be the start of a new chapter. A chapter where I took back control. I carefully filled out the check, making sure to write it for exactly $8,000. For Lily's cruise ticket only, I wrote in the memo line a silent message to Derek and Evelyn, a message that said, "I see you. I know what you're doing." I placed the check in an envelope, addressing it to Lily directly. This wasn't a gift to them. It was an investment in her happiness, a way to ensure she could experience the joy of the cruise without being burdened by her parents' machinations. I sealed the envelope, the crisp sound a small act of defiance. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. I had finally drawn a line in the sand. The setting sun painted the room in hues of orange and gold, a stark contrast to the darkness that had settled in my heart. But amidst the shadows, a flicker of resolve began to grow. This wouldn't be the end. This was just the beginning. I had a plan forming, a plan to reclaim my life, my finances, and, most importantly, my relationship with my granddaughter, a plan that would ensure Lily's future, a future free from the shadow of her parents' irresponsibility, a plan that, just perhaps, might involve a cruise of my own. The last thing I saw of my son's house was the faded paint on the front door. I didn't bother knocking. They wouldn't understand. How could they? "You're being dramatic, Dad," Derek had scoffed when I'd told him my decision. "It's just a cruise. We're family." Evelyn had just stood there, silent, clutching her phone. That silence was more telling than any shot at accusation. It confirmed everything. I had been a fool, a convenient source of funds for their frivolous lifestyle, just a cruise costing more than I spent on my last car, a cruise they'd booked without even consulting me, assuming my financial support as their birthright. Back in my own bedroom, the quiet was a balm. The mute evening light filtered through the curtains, painting stripes across my half-pack suitcase. I folded another shirt, a crisp linen one I'd been saving for a special occasion. This, I decided, was a special occasion. The occasion of my rediscovering self-respect. I'd always prided myself on providing for my family, a father's duty, I'd always said. But duty had morphed into enabling, generosity into a twisted game I'd been played. The realization stung, but it also brought a strange sense of clarity. I zipped the suitcase shut, the decisive click echoing in the stillness of the room. The cruise brochures lay discarded on the bedside table, their glossy images now mocking reminders of their manipulative tactics. Think of the photos, Dad, Evelyn had simpered. Imagine how happy Lily will be with all of us together on the ship, using my granddaughter as emotional leverage. That's low, even for them. Lily, my sweet Lily, she deserved better, and to be used as a pawn in their financial games. I'd make sure she knew that. I'd find other ways to create those happy memories with her, memories untainted by the bitter taste of manipulation. I picked up a frame photograph from the dresser. It was taken on my last solo trip, a hiking expedition in the Rockies. The vastness of the mountains, the crisp air, the solitude it had been invigorating. I'd felt alive, a feeling I'd lost somewhere along the way, buried under the weight of Derek and Evelyn's constant demands. Remember how you helped us with the down payment on the house, Dad? Derek had reminded me just last week, his voice laced with a subtle but unmistakable expectation. We're struggling a bit this month. Struggling? They were drowning in debt, and they expected me to be their life raft. Not anymore. I tucked the photograph into my suitcase, a promise of the freedom I was reclaiming. This wasn't just a trip. It was an escape from the suffocating web of obligation they had spun around me. This time the cruise wouldn't be filled with forced smiles and strained conversations. This time the journey would be mine alone. I'd booked a flight to Switzerland. The Alps. I'd always wanted to see the Matterhorn. It was a far cry from the crowded decks of a Caribbean cruise ship, and that was precisely the point. This wasn't about running away. It was about running towards something, towards myself. I glanced at the travel itinerary on my phone. Early morning flight. I needed to get some sleep. My hand hesitated over the phone. Should I call Derek? Tell him? Let him know where I was going? No. Let them wonder, let them worry, let them experience a fraction of the anxiety they'd inflicted on me for years, always dangling the threat of family estrangement over my head if I didn't comply with their demands. You wouldn't want Lily to be disappointed, would you, Dad? Evelyn's words echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of their tactics. I placed the phone on the knitstand, the screen's faint glow illuminating the room. The silence felt different now, not empty, but full of possibility. I closed my eyes, the image of the majestic Matterhorn filling my mind. The crisp mountain air, the sound of cowbells in the distance, the peace of solitude. I smiled. This was my cruise, my escape, my revenge, and it was worth every penny I hadn't given them.